While it has not been the red-hot start to the offseason that some have hoped for, Daryl Morey continues to dig in the bargain bin of the NBA, adding young talent to this future Sixers team. Jabari Walker is the latest player to join this team on a two-way contract, joining Hunter Sallis and Alex Reese to round out the bottom of those roster spots. And this is a player that we should have a bit of excitement for. I do want to break down exactly what he can bring to this Sixers team. While I do agree with the philosophical standpoint that Daryl Morey is operating from building this roster out, and a bit more about him as a player. Now, to dive right into it, we did get this report from Shams Charania coming on July 3rd here saying free agent forward Jabari Walker has agreed to a two-way NBA deal with the Philadelphia 76ers, sources tell ESPN. Walker spent his first 3 NBA seasons in Portland, appearing in 188 games. And to talk a little bit about Jabari Walker specifically, I think the first thing that popped to mind from myself and a lot of people is it's crazy that this guy's even signing a two-way. That I think that's a bit telling about the state of the league and the lack of money and opportunities that are out there for these sort of tweener type players like Jabari Walker here. Now, to dive into a bit of what he brings to the table, I will first pull up his stat profile from last year. Stats are not going to be something that fully tells the story for him. 5.2 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, zero point 0.6 steals, did shoot 38.9% from three, a pretty low sample size that we do have to work with there. But what I will say is I was really encouraged by sort of the growth in how reliable that jump shot form looks, how confident he looks taking. And I do think that building into the future, that is something that's going to be a key part of this game, that he is just 22 years old. This is not a guy that is a finished product at this point in the game. And he's obviously spent the first 3 seasons of his career with the Portland Trail Blazers here. So not a guy that has had a ton of expectations on him or has been asked to contribute to winning in a ton of ways. But I will note that there is some encouraging things when you do dive into the statistical profile as well. I did want to pull up this. Shout out to Ben Dietrich here, who tweets out, Jabari Walker had Portland's best on-off last season, with the Blazers improving on both sides of the court when he played. Phenomenal value as a two-way deal from the Sixers perspective. And this here is really encouraging to me. Shout out to Jacob Moreno, who tweets, insane stat, Jabari Walker recorded a 22.2% defensive rebounding percentage in 23-24, which ranked in the 100th percentile. What that means is that stat directly there is every rebound that does go up on the defensive end of the floor, 22% of the time that he's pulling that down. So that's a pretty good rate for a big man there, obviously the 100th percentile. And what I will say is that we've talked a little bit about Trendon Watford here. I think they're pretty, while they're in the same positional kind of category here, Jabari Walker and Trendon Watford here, I think skill set wise, you can see the difference. That to me, Trendon Watford is a bit more of a guy that wants to be a wing, but is forward size. Jabari Walker is a guy that is a forward, a real deal power forward, and a guy that could even be that type, potential center type guy. That he's more of a true big man. Well, Walker, I think I view as a bit more, or Watford, I view a little bit more of that tweener there. Now, a couple other things that I did want to note here. For starters, to look at his entire stats, that you can see not a ton of opportunities yet, but 188 games to get somebody on a two-way contract is great value there. That's a encouraging sign that this is due with more experience than you would expect. Again, two-way contracts are typically your get your foot in the door type of chance to the NBA. So as a rookie in the 2022-2023 season, played in 56 games, just 11.1 minutes per game with the Trailblazers there, averages 3.9 points, 2.3 rebounds there, which is a pretty high rebounding rate based on the limited minutes. Then he saw his level of opportunity grow the next season, 23-24, that he played in 72 games, 23.6 minutes per game there, averaged 8.9 points and 7.1 rebounds, 2.1 of those rebounds coming on the offensive end. That's really encouraging me. His assist number also grew to 1.0 that season. The defensive metrics not overly popping, and you can see the three-point shot still a work in progress. That he shot 29.5% in that second season there, but took a big leap forward this past season from the perimeter, 38.9%. Now, it is 1.2 three-point attempts per game. It is not something that I would read into super heavily to this point, but it's encouraging to me that he is taking those proactive steps to build in this category. That is a skill set that he seems determined to improve on, and if he can obviously take those steps, that does change the way you view him as a player to an extent. Now, his opportunity was scaled back from his second season to his third. Last season with the Trailblazers, that he played in 60 games, only one start compared to 23 the previous season, and his minutes per game dropping to 12.5 there. As expected, when the minutes drop, so does the production, with him putting out 5.2 points and 3.5 rebounds per game last year. Now, as far as the Trailblazers conversation here, and I know Trendon Watford is a guy who spent some time over there. It is interesting that Daryl Morey sort of digging through their scraps and adding talent from their organization in particular there. But I will say that that's not something that's a major concern to me. That's seeing his level of opportunity slip from his second season to his third there. I do think the expectations have begun to change in Portland. That I don't think Jabari Walker, while he's a good player and a guy that I think they were willing to take a chance on, was ever remotely viewed in sort of that young core there when you think about the pieces that they do have in place and the high draft picks that they have taken there. So I think he just kind of got put on the back burner to prioritize minutes and development for some of those guys instead. And obviously he has now been freed from the organization and the Sixers are able to add him here. Now, I did want to set a reminder when I put on these sort of qualifiers of this is great value for a two-way player, what exactly a two-way player is here and who is eligible for a two-way contract. Only players who have fewer than 4 years of experience in the NBA can sign a two-way contract. For the sake of these contracts, experience means playing a game in the NBA. So if a player has only played 4 games in their career, if each of these 4 games occurred different seasons, they're ineligible for a two-way contract. Additionally, players are limited to 2 years on a two-way contract with the same team. So obviously Walker just making the cut there as he has 3 years of NBA experience and legitimate NBA experience with 188 games logged there. Now, to round out the top of this, or the bottom of the Sixers roster here, did want to reflect on exactly what things are looking at. We've talked plenty about the state of the top, the high monetary commitments that have been made to Paul George, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and how much of this roster is top heavy here that makes it so important to maximize kind of the intricacies of what you can do at the bottom of the roster. So to take a look at these Sixers position here, these are the guys that I think are worth keeping a name on, particularly recording this on the eve of before Summer League starts off there. So we will begin to see how these guys shape their roles from here. And at this point, Jabari Walker not on the spot track cap sheet yet. But we do have Ricky Council, who I did want to bring back in the conversation here, a fully non-guaranteed contract. And why did I bring that up is currently it's shaping out that there's going to be not a ton of, room for improvement on this roster. There are not a lot of empty spots that they can work with now. It's currently looking like about one more guy that they can add to this team. And I'll also note that it's been pretty commonplace for the Sixers team to carry fewer than that coming into the season. That they will start a year with 14 guys to give a little bit more financial flexibility, cut numbers, and that kind of thing. I bring this into the conversation to note that Ricky Council's contract is non-guaranteed. Personally, I will say I've seen enough at this stage of the game that I'm confident that Ricky Council IV is unfortunately just not quite the NBA quality player that the Sixers are looking for. I think there is a world where he could be a fun player on a very bad organization. Maybe he can pop over to the Trailblazers or something like that, where he can just make his madness happen. But I was really discouraged by the version of Ricky that we saw last year. And I think if anything, in a season where everything went off the rails and was complete madness, that should have been an environment in which he thrived in. And I felt it was the exact opposite. The shooting is just not there. It would not surprise me whatsoever if Daryl Morey just cuts ties with Ricky Council for the sake of opening up another roster spot. Now, Adem Bona on a full-scale contract here, and we'll be very intrigued to see how he looks in Summer League coming into his second season. I thought he looked really good down the stretch of last season, and I'm open-minded. I think him and Janai Broom are going to be like an interesting contrast of skill sets from the backup center position, and obviously Andre Drummond still in the mix until a trade does go down, which to me it still sounds like all intentions are they are building towards that. Hunter Salas, another guy on the two-way contract. I've spoken about him on a video. The Wake Forest product, a guy that I think is worth an awesome swing to take a chance on here. If he had shot better this season, he would have been a first-round pick. It is as simple as that. This was a guy who created legitimate NBA draft buzz for his previous season at Wake Forest, went back to school as he was sort of viewed as a fringe first-round pick, and then really struggled as a shooter. He went from a lights-out 40% three-point shooter in his junior season to less than 30% this year. What's true in there is to be determined, but this is a guy who is money from the mid-range. He's legitimately has a case for the best mid-range shooter in this draft class. Kevin O'Connor of Yahoo Sports, I believe there, that he's been on record saying that he is the best mid-range shooter in this class. That's going to be a fun guy to watch and keep an eye on in Summer League, and it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if he gets some opportunity with the real Sixers team this year. Alex Reese was a guy who made the most of his chance while sticking around. Another dude with a ton of experience in the two-way category. He's 26 years old and on a two-way contract here. I didn't mind what I saw from Reese, a guy who's just real deal, power forward size, and willing to shoot threes. And I think that is sort of a couple boxes that the Sixers have looked to check there. So kind of, I guess, a good sign that he's kept around for the second season for his specific security there. He's another guy that we'll keep our eye on from a Summer League perspective. So there will be some moving parts at the bottom of this roster moving forward here. That even a guy like Jabari Walker, who I'm confident will stick around, it is not certain for any of these guys at this point in the game. This is the fluid stage of roster building and in the summer here. But I do think Jabari Jabari Walker is a home run addition, a guy that has a legitimate chance of being upgraded to a standard contract if he proves important enough to the Sixers team. And there is a world where I think for all these power forward concerns that we're having and who's going to be the guy that fill these minutes, this is the right type of swing to take. So to Daryl Morey, shout out to you for continuing to sift through the rubble, find these value contracts, and giving some young talent to continue to build on. I'm encouraged by what Jabari Walker can bring to this team. I think him and Watford are two really good options as that sort of next power forward mold. Still with like one more guy in that specific archetype. I still have this feeling in my gut that Precious Achiuwa is going to be a Sixer. We do know that he had some of his best years playing for Nick Nurse up in Toronto, is on the outs in New York, and obviously they took Yabusele there. I'm not the biggest Achiuwa guy, but I certainly see the vision as far as what his skill set and activity is. So I don't know. I think there is still work to be done at the power forward position, but Jabari Walker is another key part of this conversation moving forward. So shout out to Daryl Morey for adding that as an option. Shout out to you guys for tuning into this video here. Drop your thoughts below on how high are you on Jabari Walker. Is this a guy that you think is going to be pushing for that starting role, a for sure standard contract guy before the regular season tips off? Drop those thoughts below on what your thoughts are on him. Appreciate you guys for watching. As always, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button. Drop a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.